The gallery seats were empty except for one human. Daniel Reed sat alone in the uppermost row of the Galactic Assembly Hall, a data pad resting on his knee. Below him, thousands of alien representatives filled the chamber in a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some breathed methane, others existed as pure energy fields contained in specialized suits. The translation devices hummed softly, converting countless languages into a unified stream of understanding. Today marks session 7429 on what the Assembly called the human question. 50 years had passed since Earth first made contact. 50 years of provisional membership, of waiting, of hoping for acceptance. Ambassador Trell rose from his seat. The Hixer looked like a mantis built from chrome and violet crystal. His four eyes fixed on the central podium as he activated his speaking platform. The chamber fell silent. Honored members, Trell began, his voice resonating through the hall. Once again, we discuss whether to grant the humans full membership. Once again, I must counsel patience. These creatures are the galaxy's persistent children. They have potential, yes, but they lack the wisdom that comes with age. Scattered sounds of agreement rippled through the assembly. Daniel wrote a note on his pad. No change from last year's speech that a Vashan delegate stood next. The crystalline being refracted light into dancing patterns as she spoke. The humans are too emotional. Their decisions are driven by feelings rather than logic. Just last month, their colony on Ross 154 diverted emergency supplies to help a Vashan mining accident. This demonstrates poor resource management and irrational attachment to other species. More agreements. Daniel added another note. The Kaur representative spoke next. The ancient species looked like floating jellyfish made of starlight. Their lifespan is mayfly brief. 80 years if they're lucky. How can they make decisions that affect centuries? They lack the perspective that longer-lived species possess. They cannot think beyond their own generation. The Darien ambassador was next, his metallic skin gleaming under the chamber lights. Their technology is primitive. They still use kinetic weapons, bullets and missiles like children playing with sticks. They have contributed nothing to our scientific advancement. Their mathematics is basic. Their physics is elementary. What value do they bring to this assembly? Daniel kept writing. The criticisms were familiar now. He had heard them all before, in dozens of sessions over the past 5 years since becoming Earth's representative. A small delegate from the Fen cluster added her voice. They are too attached to their single world. Most species have multiple colony worlds before seeking membership. Humans cling to Earth like infants to a mother. They are not ready for the galactic stage. The session continued for 3 hours. 47 species spoke. 47 species listed humanity's failures. Too aggressive, too peaceful, too unified, too divided, too curious, too cautious. The contradictions did not seem to matter. The conclusion was always the same. Finally, the assembly speaker called for the vote. The ancient being's voice carried no emotion. All those in favor of granting humanity full membership status indicate now. Silence filled the hall. Not a single light appeared on the voting board. All those opposed to granting humanity full membership status indicate now. The board lit up like a constellation. 847 votes against. The display showed the number in harsh red light. All those who abstain indicate now. 3 lights appeared. The Vashan who had lost miners in the Ross 154 accident. A Kaur historian who studied human literature. A small species Daniel had never met. The speaker announced the result. By vote of 847 to 0, with 3 abstentions, humanity will remain in provisional status indefinitely, pending cultural maturation. This session is concluded. The delegates began filing out, already discussing other matters. The human question was settled for another year, perhaps for many years. The word indefinitely hung in the air like smoke. Daniel gathered his datapad and stood. He walked down the long stairs from the gallery to the main floor. Several delegates glanced at him as he passed. Some looked curious. Others looked pitying. Most looked right through him as if he were invisible. Ambassador Trell waited near the exit. The Hickser's mandibles clicked in what might have been sympathy. Representative Reed, I hope you understand this is not personal. Your species simply needs more time. Daniel met his 4 eyes. I understand perfectly, Ambassador. Thank you for your clarity. Will Earth appeal the decision? No appeal will be filed. Trell seemed surprised. No protest? No demand for reconsideration? No, Daniel said simply. We heard what was said today. We will consider it carefully. He walked past Trell and out of the assembly hall. The corridor outside was filled with delegates discussing trade agreements and border disputes. None of them looked at the human passing through their midst. Daniel reached the transport platform and requested a shuttle to the human embassy. While he waited, he reviewed his notes. Pages and pages of criticisms. Too young, too emotional, too primitive, too limited. The shuttle arrived. Daniel climbed aboard and sat by the window. As the transport lifted away from the assembly complex, he looked back at the massive structure. It had stood for 10,000 years, hosting millions of species over the millennia. Today, it had rejected humanity once more. His communicator chimed. The Human Coalition Council was waiting for his report. Daniel activated the device. Prepare the embassy for withdrawal. Recall all personnel from assembly worlds. Initiate the quiet years protocol. The voice on the other end hesitated. All of it. 200 years of silence. Daniel watched the assembly hall shrink behind him. All of it. They have taught us what we need to learn. Now we need time to grow up. He ended the communication and closed his eyes. The real work was about to begin. 3 weeks had passed since the vote. The human embassy complex hummed with quiet activity as workers packed equipment into shipping containers. No one rushed. No one shouted. The withdrawal was methodical and calm. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the xenobiology lab, carefully wrapping samples in protective foam. She had spent 12 years studying Vashan cellular structure alongside their scientists. 12 years of friendship and discovery. Now those partnerships were ending. Her Vashan colleague Chris floated nearby, light refracting through his crystalline body in muted colors. You are truly leaving? All of you? Sarah sealed another container. Yes, all diplomatic staff, all researchers, all cultural exchange participants. Earth is recalling everyone. But why? The vote was expected. Your people knew this would happen. We didn't know, Sarah agreed. She picked up a holophoto from her desk. It showed her and Chris at a research conference, both smiling. That does not make it easier. Chris dimmed slightly, his equivalent of sadness. Will you return? Sarah placed the photo in her personal bag. I do not know. That decision is above my level. Across the station, Commander James Wright supervised the removal of human personnel from the Joint Peacekeeping Force. The Darien security chief watched the process with obvious satisfaction. Running home to your little planet? The Darien officer asked. Perhaps that is where you belonged all along. James did not rise to the bait. He simply verified the equipment manifest and submitted it for approval. All human gear accounted for. The barracks are clean and ready for your replacement personnel. We will not need replacements. Humans contributed little to security operations anyway. James handed him the datapad. Then you should have no complaints about our departure. In the trade sector, human merchants closed their shops and settled their accounts. The economic impact was minimal. Human trade represented less than 2% of assembly commerce. Most species barely noticed the change. A Kayer economist named Reth ran the numbers out of curiosity. Humanity imported far more than they exported. Their departure would actually improve trade balance sheets for several species. He filed his report and thought nothing more of it. The galactic news networks gave the withdrawal brief coverage. Most anchors treated it as a minor story. One Hickser journalist interviewed Ambassador Trell for his perspective. The children are sulking, Trell explained with an amused click of his mandibles. They will be back when they need real technology. Earth cannot survive without assembly support. The interviewer asked if Trell felt any concern about the withdrawal. None whatsoever. This is a predictable emotional response. Humans are, as we noted in session, driven by feelings rather than logic. In a few years, they will realize their mistake and request readmission to provisional status. We will welcome them back, of course, once they have learned humility. The interview ended. The news cycle moved on to more important matters at the human embassy. Daniel Reed held a final meeting with the few species who had developed genuine friendships with humans. Chris was there, along with two KR historians and a fan artist named Lilla. "We do not understand," Lilla said. Her small frame trembled with emotion. "You are leaving because of pride?" Daniel shook his head. "Not pride, clarity. The assembly made clear what they think of us. We heard them. Now we must decide what to do with that information." One of the KR historians leaned forward. "You could stay and prove them wrong." "We could," Daniel agreed. "Or we could leave and grow without their scrutiny, without the constant pressure of proving ourselves worthy to species who have already decided we are not." Chris brightened with sudden understanding. "You are going to develop independently, without assembly influence." "Yes." "For how long?" Daniel considered the question. "As long as it takes." The final human transport departed the assembly's central hub 3 days later. News cameras recorded the event more out of routine than interest. The departure of a minor species barely warranted mention. Daniel stood on the transport's observation deck, watching the hub shrink into the distance. An aide approached with a datapad. "Final message to the assembly, sir. It requires your approval." Daniel read the brief text. "This is acceptable. Send it." The message transmitted across all official channels. It contained no anger, no accusations, no demands. Just a simple statement. "To the Galactic Assembly. Humanity thanks you for 50 years of education. You have shown us clearly where we stand and what you believe we lack. We will apply the lessons learned. We wish you prosperity and peace. We will not trouble you again until we have something worth your attention." The message ended with no signature, no formal closing. Just those words and silence that in the assembly hall. The speaker read the message aloud during the next session. A few delegates chuckled. Most ignored it completely. The human question was resolved. Time to move on to real business. Ambassador Trell archived the message without comment. 50 years of dealing with humans was enough. He felt relief that the matter was finally settled on the transport. Daniel's aide asked about the next steps. "Do we really proceed with the Quiet Years initiative? 200 years seems extreme." Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. Behind them, the assembly went about its business, already forgetting that humans had ever been among them. 200 years is not extreme," Daniel said quietly. "It is necessary." They mocked us. They listed our failures. Every criticism was accurate. "We are young. We are emotional. We are primitive. We are limited." He turned from the window. "So we go home and we fix those problems. We do not argue. We do not protest. We simply become what we need to be. And when we are ready, when we have truly grown up, then we return. And if they reject us again," Daniel smiled, "then we will know we are fine without them." The transport jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the assembly continued its sessions. Ahead of them, Earth waited with questions. But Daniel had answers now. He knew exactly what needed to happen next. The quiet years had begun. Prill hated research assignments. The young Hixer student sat in the university library, surrounded by ancient data files about species that had failed first contact protocols. Most were boring. A few were tragic. All were depressing. His thesis advisor had insisted on this topic. "Understanding failure helps us appreciate success," Professor Venn had explained. Prill thought it was just busy work to keep graduate students occupied, that he scrolled through another file. The Kreenex, extinct for 4,000 years after rejecting assembly guidance. The Solth, who had isolated themselves and vanished into deep space. And then, buried in the archives under incomplete integration cases, he found humanity. The file was sparse. Initial contact date, provisional membership status, withdrawal after 50 years. A note at the bottom read, "Species departed assembly space 180 years ago. Current status unknown. Presumed isolated on homeworld." Prill added a footnote to his thesis. Just a brief mention. Humanity was barely worth a paragraph. He moved on to more interesting failures. Outside the library, the galaxy had changed considerably in 180 years. The assembly had grown by 200 new member species. Borders had shifted. Alliances had formed and broken. The Darien hegemony had become the dominant military power. Their aggressive expansion worried the older species, but none were willing to confront them directly. The Darien took what they wanted and dared anyone to stop them. Several species that had mocked humanity at that long-ago vote were now struggling. The Fen cluster had lost 3 colony worlds to economic collapse. The Hixer Confederation had split into rival factions. Even the ancient Kaer had retreated to their core worlds, finding the modern galaxy too chaotic for their taste, and no one talked about Earth anymore. The homeworld of humanity was so far from current events that it might as well not exist. Long-range surveys occasionally picked up odd signals from a solar system, but they were dismissed as stellar radiation or equipment malfunction. In a small art gallery on a Vashan colony world, an elderly crystalline being named Chris kept a holophoto on display. It showed him standing beside a human woman named Sarah. The photo was 180 years old. Sarah had been dead for over a century. Young Vashan visitors sometimes asked about the image. Chris would explain that humans were a species he had worked with long ago. Most had never heard of them. They would nod politely and move on to other exhibits. Chris did not mind. He kept the photo not for others, but for himself. Sarah had been his friend. He missed their conversations about cellular biology and their arguments about research methodology. The galaxy felt smaller without humans in IT assembly headquarters. A junior analyst named Reth sat in his office reviewing old shipping records. The Kaer was writing a report on abandoned colony initiatives. He had stumbled across something odd. Humanity had launched 12 colony ships before their withdrawal. Each ship carried 10,000 people and was headed to a different star system. But none of them had ever arrived at their destinations. No signals, no reiki, no evidence of what happened to them. Reth checked the data 3 times. The ships had simply vanished. 120,000 humans disappeared into space without a trace. He filed a query with the Assembly's missing vessel database. The response came back within hours. Event occurred outside statute of limitations. Case closed due to species departure from Assembly jurisdiction. No investigation warranted. Reth stared at the message. 120,000 people just erased from existence, and no one cared because it happened too long ago. He saved the file and returned to his regular work. But the question nagged at him. Where did those ships go? In the assembly hall, a junior administrator proposed removing Earth's provisional status entirely. The species has been absent for 180 years. We should clear them from the active roster. The motion was added to the agenda, but kept getting pushed back for more important business. Finally, someone noted that removing the status would require more paperwork than just leaving it in place. The motion was withdrawn. Earth remained on the books, a forgotten footnote in assembly records. The Darien hegemony continued expanding. They had annexed 14 minor species in the past decade alone. The Assembly passed resolutions condemning the actions, but took no real steps to stop them. The Darien were too strong and too willing to fight. Ambassador Trell, now nearly 300 years old and using advanced life extension technology, was pulled from his quiet retirement to advise on the Darien situation. He recommended negotiation and compromise. Conflict should always be avoided, he told the Assembly. The Darien are aggressive, yes, but they will eventually moderate. All species do given time. The Assembly took his advice and did nothing. The Darien took 3 more worlds. Deep in Assembly space, automated monitoring stations tracked millions of signals. Most were routine. Ship transponders, communication relays, natural stellar phenomena. The computers filtered and cataloged everything, looking for anomalies. On Station 774, an automated system detected something unusual. A massive power surge from an unexpected location. The computer tagged it for review and sent an alert to the nearest monitoring station, but a technician glanced at the alert and dismissed it. Probably just a sensor glitch. He deleted the notification and went back to his real work. The computer, unconcerned with biological priorities, logged the event and continued monitoring. 3 hours later, another surge. Same location, same massive energy signature. This time the computer escalated the alert. A senior analyst reviewed the data. The surges were coming from empty space between galaxies. Nothing out there could generate that much power. She ran a diagnostic on the sensors. They checked out fine. She ran a comparison against known stellar objects. No matches. She filed a full report. Before anyone could investigate, every communication system in assembly space activated simultaneously. Billions of devices, all overridden by a single transmission. The message was simple and broadcast in every known language. This is humanity. We have returned to the conversation. We request an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. In his university library, Prill's datapad suddenly displayed the message. He stared at it in confusion. Humanity? The failed species from his thesis? On the Vashan art world. Chris heard the message and dimmed with shock. After 180 years of silence, his old friends were back in his office. Reth heard the message and immediately understood. The missing colony ships. The energy surges. Humanity had not vanished. They had been preparing, and now they were ready to talk. Panic spread through the assembly faster than light. Someone had just overridden every communication system in known space simultaneously. The technical implications were terrifying. That level of power and precision should not be possible. Security forces went to maximum alert. The Darien hegemony scrambled their fleet, certain this was an attack. The ancient Kaur retreated even further into their core worlds. Smaller species activated emergency protocols and sealed their borders in the assembly hall. The emergency session convened within hours. Thousands of delegates filled the chamber, talking over each other in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. The speaker called for order. We have received a communication from a species claiming to be humanity. Historical records confirm humans were granted provisional status 200 years ago and withdrew from assembly space. Does anyone have current information on this species? Silence. No one knew anything. Humanity had been forgotten. Ambassador Trell was brought to the chamber. The ancient Hixer moved slowly, even with mechanical assistance. His 4 eyes had clouded with age, but his mind remained sharp. I remember them, Trell said. Small species. Emotional. Primitive technology. They left after we denied them full membership. I assumed they had isolated themselves on their home world. Could they have developed this transmission technology? Someone asked. Trell's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Impossible. They were barely capable of basic FTL travel. This must be someone else using their name. A Darien admiral stood. We should destroy whatever is sending this message. It is a clear threat to assembly security. We do not know it is a threat, a Vashan delegate countered. They requested dialogue, not war. They hijacked our entire communications network, the admiral snapped. That is an act of war. The debate continued for hours. Finally, someone suggested actually responding to the message. The idea was so simple that everyone stopped arguing. The assembly sent a reply. Your transmission has been received. Provide coordinates for contact. The response came immediately. A set of coordinates in neutral space, exactly 1 light year from assembly's outer border, and a simple request. We will arrive in 3 days. We ask for peaceful contact. The assembly dispatched 30 warships to the coordinates. The fleet was led by Admiral Kor of the Darien hegemony, a veteran of 24 conflicts. He had orders to observe and, if necessary, neutralize any threat. Kor stood on his command deck, watching the countdown. 3 days to wait. 3 days to prepare. His crew ran combat drills constantly. Whatever came out of FTL, they would be ready. When the time came, sensors detected the approaching vessels while they were still in FTL. The energy signatures were massive. Admiral Kor ordered all ships to combat stations. How many vessels? He demanded. 12 distinct signatures, sir. They're slowing to normal space. The human ships emerged from FDL, and Kor's confidence evaporated. The vessels were enormous, each one larger than 3 Darien battleships combined. Their hulls were smooth and black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No visible weapons, but the power readings were off the scale. Sir, their shields are generating more energy than our entire planetary defense grid on the homeworld. Kor stared at the displays. These could not be human ships. Humans were primitive. Humans used kinetic weapons and basic FTL drives. These vessels were beyond anything in the assembly's arsenal that a communication channel opened. This is the human vessel pioneer. We request permission to send a representative to your flagship. Kor considered refusing, but his orders were to make contact. Permission granted. One representative only. A small shuttle detached from the lead human ship. It approached the Darien flagship slowly, transmitting peaceful, intense signals. Kor watched it dock and sent a security team to escort the visitor. The human who stepped off the shuttle was a woman of average height with dark skin and gray hair. She wore simple clothing with no obvious weapons. 2 security officers flanked her as they walked to the command deck. She stopped in front of Admiral Kor and smiled. "I am Linda Hayes, representative of the Human Coalition. Thank you for agreeing to meet." Kor studied her carefully. She looked fragile, soft, nothing like the terrifying ships outside. "I'm Admiral Kor. Explain how you acquired those vessels." "We built them," Linda said simply. "Impossible. Your species barely understood FTL technology 200 years ago." "That was 200 years ago," Linda agreed. "We have learned much since then." She pulled a small data core from her pocket. "I have information to share with the Assembly. It explains what humanity has been doing during our absence. May I present it at the emergency session?" Kor wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him these humans were dangerous. But his orders were clear. "You will be escorted to the Assembly Hall under guard. Any aggressive action will result in immediate termination." Linda nodded. "I understand. We have no intention of violence, Admiral. We came to help." "Help with what?" She met his eyes. "The war that is coming. The war your hegemony is about to start. The war that will devastate this entire region of space." Kor's officers tensed. How did she know about the hegemony's expansion plans? Those were classified at the highest levels. Linda continued calmly. "We have been watching. We know what is happening. The Darien hegemony has been pushing boundaries for years. Soon you will push too far and trigger a cascade conflict. Dozens of species will be drawn in. Billions will die." "You're spying on us," Kor accused. "We are observing," Linda corrected, "and we are offering to prevent the catastrophe. If you will listen." Kor signaled his crew. "Take her to a secure chamber. I need to report this to the Assembly." As the guards led Linda away, she paused. "Admiral, I brought something else. A recording. It is 200 years old. You might find it educational." She handed him a data chip. Kor took it suspiciously. "What is this?" "The reason we left. The words that taught us we had work to do. I think your Assembly should hear them again." Linda was escorted away. Kor looked at the data chip. Against his better judgment, he loaded it into a secure player. Ambassador Trell's voice filled the room. Young, confident, dismissive. "These creatures are the galaxy's persistent children. They have potential, yes, but they lack the wisdom that comes with age." The recording continued through the entire session. Every mockery, every dismissal, every vote against humanity. Then Linda's voice. "You asked when we would mature, Ambassador Trell. Do we meet your standards now?" Kor stopped the recording. He looked out at the massive human vessels waiting in space. Then he sent a message to the Assembly. "Prepare for the emergency session and find Ambassador Trell. He needs to hear this." Every species in the Assembly filled the chamber. Delegates who had not attended a session in decades made the journey. This was history unfolding. Everyone wanted to witness it. Linda Hayes stood where Daniel Reed had stood 2 centuries before. The gallery seats above were packed. The chamber floor held more delegates than the fire codes allowed. No one cared. This moment was too important to miss. The speaker called the session to order. "Representative Hayes of humanity, you have requested this emergency session. The Assembly grants you the floor." Linda looked around the chamber. Some faces showed curiosity. Others showed fear. A few showed anger. She took a breath and began. 200 years ago, my predecessor stood in this chamber and heard your judgment. You called us children. You said we were too emotional, too short-lived, too primitive, too limited. You voted 847 to 0 to deny us membership. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many delegates had not known the details. That vote had been long forgotten. You were right about us, Linda continued. We were children. We were emotional and primitive. We had much to learn. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the chamber floor, visible to everyone. So we went home and we grew up. The first image showed Earth as it had been 200 years ago. Crowded cities, polluted oceans, divided nations. Then the image changed. The same planet, but transformed. Cities integrated with nature. Clean energy visible from space. A unified world government. You said we were too emotional, so we developed psychological disciplines. Every human now trains from childhood in emotional regulation. We feel as deeply as we always did, but we control how those feelings drive our actions. The most stable species psychology in the galaxy is now human. A Vashan delegate stood. That is impossible to verify. Linda smiled. We brought our medical and psychological data. Any species is welcome to review it. We have nothing to hide. She changed the display. Now it showed sleek ships moving through space at impossible speeds. You said our technology was primitive. You mocked our kinetic weapons and basic FTL drives. So we started over. We threw away everything we thought we knew and rebuilt from first principles. The display showed complex equations and schematics. Assembly scientists leaned forward, trying to understand. We discovered 7 new fundamental forces. We developed FTL methods that make your technology look like steam engines. We do not use kinetic weapons anymore. We do not need weapons at all. A Darien officer shouted. Lies. No species advances that much in 2 centuries. You are correct, Linda agreed. No species working within assembly space could advance this far. But we were not in assembly space. We were free to explore and experiment without your limitations. She changed the display again. This image showed the 12 colony ships that had vanished 200 years ago. Reth, the KR analyst, sat forward. He had wondered about those ships. You asked what happened to our colony vessels. They did not disappear. They reached their destinations. But those destinations were not the systems we listed in our departure manifests. The display showed a map, not of assembly space, but of the entire local galactic cluster. Hundreds of stars marked in human blue. We sent those ships to distant galaxies, places you have never explored. We established colonies across a region of space 10 times larger than the assembly's territory. We have been out there for 200 years, meeting new species and learning from them. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The speaker called for order, but was ignored. Linda raised her voice. We have encountered 2,300 species beyond assembly space. Many were fleeing wars. Others were escaping persecution. Some were just lost. We helped every single one. We asked for nothing in return except friendship. She let that sink in. We shared our technology. We taught them our psychological methods. We protected them when they needed protection. We became the species we needed to be, not through isolation, but through service to others. Ambassador Trell stood slowly, his mechanical supports whirring. If this is true, why return? Why come back to the assembly that rejected you? Linda looked at him directly. Because you are in danger and we can help. The Darien hegemony's expansion is about to trigger a cascade war. We have seen the pattern before in other regions. We know what comes next. The Darien delegates shouted denials, but Linda continued. Your expansion has pushed 17 species to the breaking point. They are forming a defensive alliance. When you attack the next border world, they will respond collectively. The KR will be drawn in to protect their trade routes. The Vashan will defend their allies. Within 6 months, 40% of assembly space will be at war. She changed the display. It showed a projection of the coming conflict. Ships burning, world devastated, casualty estimates in the billions. We have the ability to prevent this. Our technology can create defensive barriers that make invasion impossible. Our psychological methods can facilitate real negotiation instead of armed standoff. Our experience with conflict resolution spans 2,000 different species and cultures. A small delegate from the Fen cluster asked quietly, "Why would you help us?" "We mocked you. We rejected you." Linda smiled. "Because that is what grown-ups do. You taught us we needed to mature." "We did. Part of maturity is helping others, even when they have hurt you. Especially then." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate processed what they had heard. The speaker finally spoke. "You said you came to help if we will have you. What are you proposing?" "Partnership," Linda said. "Not membership. Membership implies you have authority over us. Partnership means we are equals. We will help you prevent this war. We will share our technology and knowledge. We will defend any species that requests our protection. In return, we ask only that you treat us as equals." She looked around the chamber. "We do not need your approval anymore. We do not need your acceptance. We became who we needed to be without your guidance. But we remember where we came from. And we remember that you, in your own way, helped us grow." Linda paused. "So we return not as children seeking permission. We return as adults offering partnership. The choice is yours." The session dissolved into debate. But this time, humanity was not being mocked. This time, they were being taken seriously. Because this time they had earned it. The assembly had not stopped arguing for 6 hours. Delegates shouted across the chamber floor. Alliances formed and broke within minutes. Pride warred with fear. Skepticism battled desperation. Some species wanted to accept the human offer immediately. Others demanded proof of their claims. The Darien hegemony insisted the whole thing was an elaborate deception. The debate went in circles. Finally, Ambassador Trell requested permission to speak. The ancient Hixer had been silent since Linda's presentation. Now he moved slowly to the central podium. The chamber quieted out of respect for his age and experience. "I owe humanity an apology," Trell said. His voice was weaker than it had been 200 years ago, but it still carried through the hall. "I stood in this chamber and called them children. I mocked their emotions and their primitive technology. I led the vote to reject their membership." He paused, his 4 eyes sweeping across the assembly. "I was wrong. Not about their limitations at the time. Those were real. But I was wrong about what those limitations meant. I thought they proved humanity was inferior. Instead, they proved humanity was capable of growth." Trell looked up at Linda. "Representative Hayes, you showed us a recording of that session 200 years ago. You could have used it to shame us, to make us feel small for our mockery. Instead, you thanked us for teaching you that you had work to do." He turned back to the assembly. "That is maturity. That is wisdom. Humanity has become what we claimed they could never be. And they did it not by arguing with us, but by listening to us and then proving us wrong through action. I vote in favor of partnership with humanity, and I urge this assembly to do the same." The Darien ambassador jumped to his feet. "This is surrender to an unknown threat. We have only their word that their intentions are peaceful." "Then let us test their word," a Vashan elder suggested. "The hegemony claims humanity is lying about preventing war. Attack the next border world as you planned. See what humanity does." The Darien ambassador's expression shifted. "We have no plans to attack. You have plans to annex the Frith colony within the next 10 days, Linda said calmly. "Your fleet is already in position. Your invasion force is prepared. We have been monitoring your movements." Outrage erupted. The Darien delegation demanded to know how humans had accessed classified military intelligence. Linda simply waited for the noise to die down. "We told you," she said. "We have been watching. We needed to know if our warning was accurate." "It is." The Darien ambassador turned to his military advisors. They had a brief, heated discussion. Then he addressed the assembly. "We will not be threatened or blackmailed. Our defensive positioning is our own concern. Then proceed with your annexation," Linda said. "But know that if you do, human forces will intervene, not to attack you, to protect the Frith. You would go to war with the Darien hegemony." "We would prevent a war," Linda corrected. There is a difference. The Darien ambassador stormed out. His delegation followed. The chamber erupted in fresh debate. 3 days later, the Darien fleet moved on the Frith colony. The hegemony leadership had decided to call humanity's bluff. If humans intervened, the Darien would destroy them and prove they were no threat. If humans did nothing, their credibility would be destroyed. The Frith colony had a population of 2 million. They had no military to speak of. Their distress call went out to the assembly, but no one responded fast enough. The Darien fleet would arrive in hours. Then human ships appeared. Not 12 this time. 40. They positioned themselves in a perfect sphere around the Frith colony world. The Darien admiral sent a warning. Withdraw or be destroyed. The human response was simple. We will not withdraw. Fire if you must. The Darien fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, energy weapons, kinetic bombardment. The assault continued for 3 hours. Every weapon in their arsenal was deployed. The human shields absorbed it all. Not a single shot reached the planet below. The human ships did not move, did not return fire, simply held position and protected the Frith. After 3 hours, the Darien fleet exhausted their ammunition. The admiral stared at his displays in disbelief. They had thrown everything at those human ships and accomplished nothing. A communication channel opened. Are you finished? Linda Hayes asked. The admiral had no response. His fleet was out of ammunition, and the humans had not even bothered to shoot back. You may return to Darien space, Linda continued. Tell your leadership what happened here. Tell them that human shields can withstand anything you can deliver. Tell them that we will protect any species that requests our help. And tell them that we will never fire first. The Darien fleet retreated. Word of what happened spread across the galaxy within hours. The message was clear. Humanity could defend, but would not attack. They had the power to conquer, but chose protection instead. The assembly vote came 2 days later. 847 species voted in favor of partnership with humanity. 0 voted against. The abstentions came from species who wanted time to study the situation further. The unanimous vote shocked everyone. The same assembly that had rejected humanity 200 years ago now embraced them completely. Linda stood before them once more. We accept partnership on equal terms. We will share our technology and knowledge freely. We will defend any species that requests protection. We will work with the assembly to prevent the coming war. She paused. But we decline full membership. Membership implies hierarchy. Partnership implies equality. We prefer equality. For the first time in assembly history, a species dictated terms rather than accepting them, and the assembly agreed. Ambassador Trell approached Linda after the session. May I ask what humanity learned during your silence? Linda considered the question. We learned that the species who mocked us were not wrong. We were children, but children grow up, and the best adults remember what it felt like to be underestimated. They use that memory to lift others up instead of putting them down. You could have taken revenge on us, Trell said quietly. Revenge is what children seek, Linda replied. Adults seek improvement. You gave us the gift of honest criticism. We used it to become better. Why will we punish you for helping us grow? On Earth, Daniel Reed watched the assembly session from his home. He was 230 years old now, his life extended by the same technology that had advanced everything else. A young intern sat beside him. Do you feel vindicated? The intern asked. Daniel smiled. Vindication was never the point. They taught us we had work to do. We did it. Now we teach others that silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is the space you need to become who you are meant to be. Across the galaxy, species who had once laughed at humanity now asked different questions. Not when would humans mature, but what could they learn from the species who had transformed mockery into motivation? The species who had turned rejection into reflection. The species who had proven that the best response to being underestimated was not anger, but excellence. The humanity's silence had finally ended. But the lessons learned during those quiet years would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come.